I began this 4,800-mile Trans-Siberian Train Adventure through Russia, Mongolia, and China by flying from Seattle via Frankfurt, Germany to Moscow. This would be a 3,600-mile train ride through Russia, 700 miles through Mongolia, and 500 miles through China to Beijing, with stopovers in Moscow, Irkutsk, Siberia, and Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. I took the Aero Express train to downtown Moscow and then transferred to the metro, which took me to my Godzilla hostel. Signs were confusing, but locals were very helpful. I joined Flo from Munich, who I met at the hostel, to tour Moscow, beginning with the Kremlin, which is where the major tourist spots are. We began at Red Square with St. Basil's Cathedral in the distance, with Lenin's mausoleum running along the right side, and on the opposite side, the GUM shopping mall. Near the Red Square Metro stands the castle-like State History Museum. Okay, there's Lenin's tomb, the Kremlin Wall. There's St. Basil's Cathedral. And this is the GUM Mall. This is a row of all the communist leaders, including Stalin, the second statue. On this day, the bell tower was closed, but most of the surrounding churches were open. Neither the Tsar cannon nor the Tsar bell have ever been used. They're now just tourist attractions. We entered some of the surrounding churches and heard some hymns while looking at the ornate paintings and religious icons. Both the Senate and Arsenal buildings were closed. We did a quick walkabout the GUM shopping mall to view all of the decadent Western companies vying for the communist rubles from eager customers. We then had another metro adventure getting back to our hostel, where the signage was in Cyrillic with few directional and station signs, unlike metros found in other countries I have visited. At least the routes were color-coded. Many of the stations had beautiful artwork as well. The young people holding cell phones were our most reliable guides. Some even used their cell phones translators to interpret our questions. We enjoyed these walking streets filled with shops and cafes, along with the ever-present Starbucks. The Radisson River Cruise provide tourists with a comfortable and different way of seeing some of Moscow. Here is where Boris Yeltsin was under siege after he declared the death of communism. This statue commemorates the 300th anniversary of the creation of the Navy by Peter the Great. This tallest Orthodox Christian church in the world was destroyed in 1931 by Stalin and rebuilt between 1995 and 2000. Here is a view of Kremlin walls with the Grand Kremlin Palace and a cluster of churches, Archangel, Assumption, 12 Apostles, and Bell Tower, followed by a glimpse of St. Basil's Cathedral. Following the cruise, I went by the now shrouded Lubyanka building and prison, former home of the KGB, where famous inmates were held, tortured, and interrogated. The Bentley, Ferrari, and Maserati dealerships and other high-end retail shops contrasted with the nearby KGB building. The famous Bolshoi Theater was in recess while I was in Moscow. Here is one of the early Trans-Siberian diesel trains that is now a monument in Moscow. I would see many more of these train monuments at stops along the route. I am leaving Moscow in the rain for my 5-day platzkart train ride to Irkutsk. The platzkart, third class and cheapest, has 26 bunk beds all in an open area. Second class, or coupe, has 2 bunk beds per compartment, and first class, Spalny wagon, has 1 bunk bed per compartment. You can see most of the seats are down, and you can store your bags under the bottom seat. Each train has a dining car. I headed to this one for my evening meal of borscht soup and fried halibut. Very tough.
Okay, this is Balyazino, Arzelino, changing engines.
The scenery has been flat, open fields interspersed with spindly forests they call taiga. The towns along the way seem to support different industries and are not noteworthy nor scenic. I'm headed for lunch on my second day and have yet to find anyone who speaks English, so it is just pantomime and phrase books in talking to my bunkmates and others. This lunch is a well-fried pork chop with the ever-present borscht soup and a mix of raw and cooked vegetables. The train lines and the Kama River, which flows into the Volga River, make Perm a major trading and industrial center, founded on copper smelting works. We get a couple hours stop here to wander around the station and look at the roundabout nearby.
Okay, this is Perm.
Back on the train, it is again time to eat as the solo diner. This time I have the Siberian entree, which turns out to be salmon smothered in yogurt sprinkled with dill. Yes, it also comes with borscht soup. Upon my return, I met Nikolai, who had gotten on the train in Perm. He spoke excellent English and was a fire performer and mouth harp player, as you can hear. I then learned more about my other bunkmates. Lyudmila is a preschool teacher, among other things. She is 65 and has had 3 husbands. 2 died and the second one ran away with another woman. Murad is a horse trainer and breeder who lives in Irkutsk.
Just crossed over from Europe to Asia in the Ural Mountains. Missed the obelisk, but anyway, still see the trees.
Our train was filled with Russian army recruits at our Yekaterinburg stop when Nikolai got off and the recruits got on. Each carriage has a samovar for hot water and 2 toilets. Each train has a restaurant, although most passengers riding platzkart buy food from the railside vendors, the train attendant, or bring their own. Every morning I have this kind of egg omelet with lots of dill and onions.
It came from Asia to...
During our travels, the carriage attendant continues to clean our carriage and helps us out. The attendant issues each passenger sheets, blankets, and pillows to be turned in at the end of the journey. For this lunch, my chef had prepared some calamari with fennel, along with borscht soup. There were 2 other diners, and they invited me to join them for some vodka after lunch. They spoke excellent English. Nikolai, the fellow with the beard, was a physical chemistry professor, and Valeria ran an export-import business with China. We were having a great time downing shot after shot of vodka until 2 Ukrainian Russians came in. Sergei and Dmitry wanted to argue with me about Obama's position on the Ukraine. I told them I was a traveler and not a politician. Then Valeria and Dmitry almost came to blows, exchanging their views. After enough vodka, all was peaceful, and Dmitry brought out a bag of pierogies, and everything was peaceful again.
Okay, 2390.
2400.
2420. 2427. 2432. Mutinskaya.
Omsk is the mosquito and gnat capital of Russia, if not the world, since it is surrounded by miles of swamps, shallow lakes,
Boy, look
and
at that
ponds.
coal. This is a busy yard.
Back in my platzkart, the Russian army recruits have discovered my new young bunkmate, Polina, a 16-year-old heading to Irkutsk, who spoke excellent English. The recruits filled us with all of the goodies they brought aboard, and Lyudmila sang us a song before she departed at Novobrisking, along with the recruits.
Так любви не испытать, так любви, так любви, так любви не испытать, так любви. Стой, так любви.
3897.
3912.
Okay, it's June 1st, and it's snowing. 3978. 3979. 4074. The plainness continues as we make our way to Irkutsk, passing several industrial towns in Siberia. 4091. 4098. The Yenisei River bisects Siberia and flows through Mongolia and into the Arctic Ocean, about 5,200 kilometers north of its source. It is the traditional border between western and eastern Siberia. Another lunch of chicken, vegetables, and of course borscht soup prepared me for a shot of whiskey from a new passenger heading to some mine operation in Siberia. I guess whiskey is classier than vodka. 41:43.
Вот он все дописано.
4,300.
It's right. No, this one. There's my cooks and restaurant people. Lots of train-side food vendors sell their goods to passengers. These platzkart passengers have converted their space into a second-class coupe with their blankets. Here is where the Trans-Siberian Train route splits to the Baikal-Amur main line to the north and the Mongolian line to the south. My last dinner on this segment, which is chicken cutlet and borscht soup, no surprise there. Check out the small kitchen my chef has to work in. Okay, we have a zakat in Teshat as we're leaving the railroad yard. Wow. Okay, Irkutsk. From the train station, it was just a half-hour walk across the bridge into town and to my Baikal hostel. After I rang the bell, I was surprised to be greeted by Flo, who explored Moscow with me. He was joined by Clara from the Czech Republic. After posing with Lenin, we explored Irkutsk sites and churches. While we were in Kazan Cathedral, both Flo and Clara lit candles for loved ones, and I lit one for my brother Steve. Since Clara was fluent in Russian, she discovered a local cafeteria where the food was cheap and good, except for the overcooked vegetables.
Public market in Irkutsk.
I always enjoy walking through the public markets, no matter where I am, just to see what some of the local favorites are. Meats seem to be a big favorite here. This museum area features one of the old Trans-Siberian trains, along with some of the early homes found throughout Siberia. Gotta love these tourist attractions here in Irkutsk. Seems like a hard way to tow a car away.
Hey, shopping mall, Irkutsk.
This Vianka is just an hour away from Irkutsk and is on Lake Baikal, where I stayed for 3 days. Before heading to the hostel, I had a sturgeon dinner with grilled vegetables at the Mayak Hotel, which was a great presentation, although pricey. The Belka hostel was about a 20-minute climb up the hill, past some old cabins mixed in with some mega mansions built by the Russian wealthy.
This is the start of the Great Baikal Trail from Ulaanbaatar.
Looking down to Lake Baikal.
Hiking on the Grand Baikal Trail.
This trail goes up along a babbling creek until the sound disappears, but the trail continues upward until you have views of Lake Baikal. I was joined by another hiker, Peter, a German studying soil science in Russia, who was hiking to the next village, Irkutsk, some 20 kilometers away.
Baikal Trail.
Yes.
What could be better?
Thanks.
So, should I take a picture?
No, keep going there.
The views of the lake and surrounding mountains are spectacular. It's the world's deepest lake at over a mile deep and contains over 20% of the world's fresh water supplies. Known as the Blue Eye of Siberia, formed over 50 million years ago. It's over 400 miles long and up to 40 miles wide. It freezes over in the winter because of the minus 20 degrees Celsius, so cars can drive on it, and it's pure enough to drink. This part of the forest has recently recovered from a forest fire because of the light undergrowth. The umul fish is the most popular delicacy found in Lake Baikal. It is a tasty white fish, often smoked, and now endangered. Along with this, I had borscht soup. All along the lake, you will see these open-air covered picnic tables, along with amusement opportunities. Ferry boats come and go to the various towns around the lake, since there's no available road to most towns. This is the entrance to the town market, with a big vat of fried rice. Tourist trinkets compete with the popular smoked umul. My last meal here included a vegetable salad, umul, and apple turnover, followed up by Russian caviar, which looks like fish bait to me, but was tasty. Beach games here. Nuttapol, a PhD student, is the first Thai I've met while traveling outside Thailand. He was planning to hike the Grand Baikal Trail when the rains let up. I took this bus to Irkutsk. It smelled of smoked umul fish and leftover booze. The driver stopped everywhere, filling it to capacity. More borscht soup on my return to Irkutsk while it rained all day. The following day was sunny and beautiful for the Irkutsk day. which featured a people's parade that I characterize as Hare Krishna meets cosplay, as you will see. These rollerblading Smurfs were my favorites.
Харе Кришна и танец очень простой. Рецепт счастья. Давайте Кришна играл еще и в обаянии. Как видно, это на самом деле...
What does the fox say? Unlike other parades I've seen, there are no military marching groups nor high school bands, but just lots of people in a variety of costumes. Even some companies like Papa John's Pizza got in the act. These firefighters were the closest to formal marching. I hope their equipment is just antique and not currently used.
Мы, работники завода «Творческая энергия», собираем мусор.
This is the end of the parade gathering at Kirov Square. While down by the riverfront, there were children's activities and tests of endurance, balance, and strength, with a few zombies and Walking Dead thrown in. Good thing none of their body parts fell off while I was with them. Talk about lots of vodka choices for Russians. I'm saying bye to my Irkutsk hiking buddy. This Trans-Siberian train will take me about 700 miles to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. I rode in a second-class coupe compartment since there are no platzkart carriages on international trains. My compartment mates were two Kurdistan miners who were heading to work near the border, and Alex, a Russian who ran a shoe company and factory that made designer boots from reindeer hides. Alex spoke English. turned out there was no dining car on this train, but my Kurdistan buddies gave me a breakfast of bread, cheese, and sausage. Very tasty. This is the place where the Trans-Siberian Railways begins to split into 3 different routes. The traditional one through Russia to Vladivostok, another via Harbin to Beijing, and the one I took via Mongolia to Beijing.
Ulaanbaatar.
Da habe ich Schlaffer. Das habe ich für Schlaffer.
Siehst du das? Ja, mit
Oh, Frühchen dabei.
5769.
The train runs along Goose Lake for quite some time, just past the grubby mining town of Zaguste, with its factories spewing out thick smoke. Goose Lake. 5802.
Okay, this is Dazita. Big Air Force base here with airplanes and bunkers. Salenga River, coming up to the border.
Our stop began when officials came through with a drug-sniffing black Scotty dog. He was so cute, I forgot to take a picture.
Okay, this is my train at the border to Mongolia. They just got done with our passport control. Next they'll do immigration when we get back.
Our 3-hour stop at Naushki, the Russian border post, ended up being a 5-hour stop. Alex and I headed to this nearby restaurant where he treated me to a lunch of mashed potatoes and liver, vegetable salad, and of course, borscht soup. Afterward, we toured the town and spotted this funeral procession. Our train carriage stands alone as we wait for a hookup with an engine to take us past the border.
Okay, there's the Mongolian border and Russia border.
In addition to this marker, there are miles of electrified fences along this border. The kilometer markers along the railway now show the distances from the Russia-Mongolia border. We have another 400 kilometers before we arrive in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, the capital.
Okay, my train's behind this one, hopefully. Okay, here we are in Mongolia, and our engine has disappeared from the train one more time while I was in getting some ATM money.
Our train only had our carriage on it as we crossed into Mongolia. Now we have linked up with a very long string of carriages on the way to Ulaanbaatar.
Mongolia sunset.
You can just make out the rest of the carriages and engine as we round this curve. We were not allowed to visit any other carriages on this segment of travel. In Mongolia, what I knew as yurts are called gurs, which are what the nomadic people use as homes when traveling with their herds of goats, horses, and cows. We arrived in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, just as the sun was rising. Lots of gurs here, but without their animal herds. The city looks pretty grubby with its industrial buildings and big block Soviet-like buildings and housing units. I was surprised to be met by Dima, who held a sign with my name on it from the Kongar hostel. I had reserved 2 short tours and a few nights' stay with them. Traffic to the hostel was terrible. Once there, I learned from Sogolo, the hostel manager, that an Australian was heading out that morning on a 3-day, 2-night tour of the Erdene Zuu Monastery, some 236-kilometer distance. I joined up, as did a Swiss fellow. Although the road to the monastery is paved, the drivers have chosen to drive off-road to avoid the bone-jarring potholes that heavily populate the paved road. I guess the dusty road avoids damage to the suspension and tires. Paved road is in the distance.
Oh, there's a cowboy.
Along the way we passed some beautiful herds of horses, grazing and drinking from the river, with their cowboys moving them about.
We're in a race. Whoa!
We stopped at this Chorten, which is a Buddhist religious monument, and usually the faithful circle it 3 times while chanting or offering prayers. It is also a good landmark in this open arid land, and a good rest stop from all of the bouncing about off-roading. It seems that most of the restaurants have a wolf hide hanging on the wall, along with a Mongolian flag. For lunch, we have mutton soup, a nice change from borscht soup. We also met this school group on their way to the monastery.
It's massive, I can't even capture the whole wall.
We finally reached the monastery, tired and dusty.
Okay, souvenir shops by the monastery.
When we got to our first gur, it reminded me of a KOA campground rather than a rustic nomadic gur that we had expected. At least we got hot showers, Western toilet, along with a good meal. My tour group, led by Bick on the left, Meng, an Australian, and Lucas, a Swiss, are preparing to enter the monastery. Meng is now a dentist in Australia, and Lucas teaches English at a Mongolian school.
What happens if you turn it anti-clockwise? It's bad luck.
I'll find out.
It's one kind of pretty.
There we go.
So I do 3 times.
3 times.
So I undid the wrong
Don't
direction.
stop, don't stop.
Here we are posing with the students that we met yesterday at the restaurant. They took scores of pictures of us Westerners with them. This is one of the largest monasteries in Mongolia and was partially destroyed during communism and only recently rebuilt, part museum and part monastery. As a part of our tour, we had a local guide describe some of the details of the monastery.
Who is founder of this monastery, founded in 1586. There on is his grandson's tomb. His grandson is called Dirge. Side ones are meditation temple. You can see there are 3 small rooms. In each room, 4 monks meditated in ancient.
During our tour, we would hear the monk chanting from the Tibetan prayer books. Here is our last distant view of the monastery before we head to our next gear camp. Up the hillside we found a phallus rock so that when you looked at where it was positioned, the valley it pointed to resembled a woman's thighs, a truly fertile valley. We are now approaching our next ger camp, and this time we are with a group of nomadic Mongolians that make a little extra by hosting tourists. At this ger, we have no showers nor running water, and only an outhouse. The electricity we have is from some solar cells they use to run the lights, refrigerator, and their satellite TV. That is in their ger, not ours.
I'm gonna go up to the rooftop. Okay. This is a real ger.
Horse and camel rides are included as a part of our tour. I'm the only one that did not need a lead, since I'd learned how to ride from my daughter when she had a horse.
Hey Richard, how are you? Is it okay? Yeah. Good.
While at the camp, we saw one of the cows give birth to a calf, which made our hosts very happy and relieved. Now time for a camel ride to the desert sand dunes.
Video started. Hold on very well. Нөгөөдөө суулгахгүй маа гандаа. Нөгөөдгийг суулгахгүй маа. Суулгач. Hold, please. John.
Now we are safely on the camels. Our young camel guides walk us up to the top of the nearby sand dunes, which stretch out about 85 kilometers in the Gobi Desert.
Oh, it is, okay.
I think it's still going.
It's still going?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you are.
Your camel needs a lot of attention.
It's a very needy camel.
It
It's one
is.
in the middle. Sorry, I'm getting it.
Wants to be looked at all the time.
Yeah, rubbing its head up against people.
The camel ride was actually more comfortable than the horses. Plus, I got a continuous back rub from the protruding back hump.
Hold on. Okay, go.
Camel driver fun.
Wow. I would not dare do that. Wow.
Lucas, Meng, and I are feeling pretty confident with our camel riding skills. Our guard dogs liked us. For the leftovers, we fed them. On our last day, we headed to the Kastani National Park to see the Przewalski wild horses, or locally known as taki. A final rough, dusty ride gets us back to Ulaanbaatar for a short tour of the city. Ulaanbaatar is the capital and largest city in Mongolia, with a population of over 1.3 million. It's the cultural, industrial, and financial heart of the country. In the winter, the temperature drops to minus 40 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. They are the same. They are plagued by pollution problems, especially in the winter months, and cars are restricted on some days according to their license numbers. All of the 12 carriages and dining car on this international train to Beijing were new, very clean and neat, with great AC. Most of the passengers were Europeans, and most were with tour groups. We now have about 900 miles to Beijing, and of that, 375 miles to
735.
As we cross the Gobi Desert, the fields turn from a dusty green to an arid brown
Mongolia.
until we cross over to China.
Gobi Desert.
This was the first dining car that was filled with people, and I joined a family of 3 from Finland for a beef, rice, and vegetable lunch. We stopped here for the Mongolian customs and immigrations inspections. Pretty desolate. I was surprised to find out that Flo and Clara, who I last saw in Irkutsk, were in my same compartment, along with Rosie and Jacob from the UK. We no longer had the dining car, so I was able to have some delicious bread, cheese, pâté, cukes, and tomatoes for a couple of meals. We spent 5 hours here having our wider Russia-Mongolia wheels swapped out for the narrower standard gauge wheels used in China and most other places. We were unable to leave our carriages and the bathrooms were closed. Some resorted to bottles to relieve themselves. Now that we were in China, the landscape changed dramatically with lush agriculture, big cities, and many hills. We passed through over 50 tunnels on our way to Beijing. We also passed by the Great Wall of China. We are coming to the end of our Trans-Siberian Train Adventures from Moscow to Beijing and began packing up. Rosie and Jacob were astonished by how small my pack was, so Jacob and I posed in front of our train at the Beijing train station. Our other journeys begin from the Beijing train station. Rosie and Jacob to continue a year's travels, Clara and Flo to return to their work, and me to continue my train journey through China, Vietnam, and Thailand before returning home via a short stay in Taiwan.